Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3, The Game and The Game Nashville app. We are streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every single day. Paul Kuharsky, paulkuharsky.com, will join us in 1 hour. Normally, Tim Hasselbeck joins us at noon on Tuesdays. He will join us on Friday, so Paul will be in his place today. We'll get Paul's thoughts on the Titans' offensive coordinator search, some of the news about the defensive coordinator search. So we'll chat with Paul Kuharsky in 1 hour. Predators with a brutal loss 4-3 in Ottawa in overtime. Willy Donick, welcome home. D-Mase is here as well. How we doing? Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday, everyone. It's a little bit warmer outside. Willy, I don't know what to say. I mean,
hey,
it was
happened.
brutal.
That was tough.
Yeah, it's brutal.
That was a tough loss last
tough
week.
one.
It's brutal, especially going into because the All-Star weekend starts when?
well, they've got tomorrow's game,
And then they're off.
The All-Star break.
then the All-Star break.
Man,
Yep.
they got to get a win before the All-Star break. You can't go into the All-Star break, coming off of being up 3-0 and end up losing 4-3, and then not picking up a win subsequently at home right after that. So
Yeah, it's a
they
big
got
one.
they got to do something.
They've got a team, too, that they're tied in the standings with. And I really believe that the Kings, who is tomorrow's opponent, are a really good team. They are just stuck in the mud right now. They are really slumping. They're just 2-5-3 in their last 10. You can go back further than that, and they've been struggling mightily. But they're going to bust out of it. They probably need the break as much as anybody. And I think just watching last night, I think the Predators kind of hit a bit of a wall. They played a really good first period, but they just couldn't get it back in gear once Ottawa changed the momentum. Ottawa is not your normal. They've been rebuilding for about 4 years. They got a bunch of young, high first-round picks. The whole story up there, they fired the coach. Mm-hmm. They're supposed to be a lot better than they are.
It's a young, talented team that probably should be better, but they're not very good, I think is maybe a fair evaluation.
Capable, but they're capable. They've got some really good. In fact, I think if you polled a lot of general managers right now, who's got more talent? I think the Senators, because they've been picking in the top 5, top 10 for several years, have probably got more pure talent. Their biggest problem is in goal, and they made a goalie switch at the end of the first period, and a goalie that's been really struggling played pretty well for them. But no excuses for the Predators. When you're up 3-0, you need to win that game, and they didn't find a way to win it. It just exposed some of the weaknesses. The Predators have, I think, overachieved through 50 games in a lot of people's mind. But on certain nights, and I think in the last 2 periods last night, you see what they can kind of look like a Clark Kent a little bit.
Yeah.
When they're not, for example, the first line last night that they've leaned on so much, Forsberg, O'Reilly, Nyquist, they've been awesome for most of the 50 games. Last night
Carried this team for the most part.
Absolutely.
Been unbelievable.
So last night, when you take a look, they didn't have a very good game. So you see a very ordinary-looking team when that's not happening. They got goals from some other guys.
McCarron and Tomasino.
Yeah, which was great. They hadn't been
Trennan.
getting that. They've been really
Right.
struggling to score. They finally get it, and it just they couldn't find a way to get that fourth goal or be able to stop the bleeding a little bit when Ottawa came roaring back. So it's a tough one. It just kind of makes you think a lot of times. So they're now 8-9-2 in their last 19 games. So very up and down. Remember, you can really put their season, to me, in 3 parts. 5-10 to start the year, where I think they probably felt like, hey, I think we're a little better than that. I don't think we're a 5-10 kind of team, and I think that was fair. Then they got it together and went 13-3 and really looked good. And I think probably around the league we're saying, oh, Predators playing well, but are they really that good? Probably not, right? But so after that, those 2 periods, that's probably what they were. And then 8-9-2, I think they can be better than that. They're going to need to be better than that if they're going to find a way into the playoffs. But I think you look at 50 games, and we kind of thought before the season maybe this is around what they have been. So it's an interesting spot in the season right now, and they'll get a break, get a chance to recharge the batteries, sort of regroup, And I think it couldn't come at a better time right now. But still, there's a lot on tomorrow's game. You could really feel a lot better about things if you can find a way to win.
You just can't continue to fall into that hole. And is the season over? No. Is everyone going to get fired? No. Is everyone getting traded? No. But it's definitely not a game that you step away from feeling good about, because you could look at it and say, hey, at least you got 1 point, but you should have come out of that game against the Senators with 2. If you step away from a game against the Oilers, for example, taking the Oilers to overtime is much different than blowing a 3-goal lead to the Ottawa Senators, a team that hasn't been playing very well so far this season. And I watched the first period and I thought, okay, one thing that we've been talking a lot about is how do the Predators get to that next level? And it's supplementary play from guys outside of the top line. That Philip Forsberg and Ryan O'Reilly and Gus Nyquist, yeah, they can only carry you so far, but you need to start getting production from the young guys. So when I saw goals from like a Michael McCarron and a Philip Tomasino, I thought, yes, okay, that's what this team needs. They need supplementary scoring. And they go out of the first period and, UC Saros was able to deflect some action early and they were able to find the net. You go into the into first intermission up 3-0 and you feel really good. And then all of a sudden it's just the Senators flipped a switch. Like, have you seen the movie Saltburn? Mm-hmm. It's a new movie on Amazon Prime.
It's weird.
And it's super weird. But I didn't know anything about
this.
The movie.
I don't know. I've not heard this.
It's good. It's a good movie.
It's a good movie,
I didn't know what to expect. Mm-hmm. I'd seen it had a ton of rave reviews. So I thought, sure, I'll watch it. In the beginning of the movie, it's like a really cute guy who befriends this other kind of nerdy guy. In the beginning of it, I was like, oh, it's sweet. Cute guy, sweet friendship. They live in a beautiful house. And then it starts to get really weird, and it's just like kind of snowballs. That's how I felt watching that game last night. Everything was great and peachy and cute, and then all of a sudden it was like, okay, what's going on? What's going on? And things are getting weird here. That I feel like the Predators have had this continued trend of they either start really hot and start to cool off in the latter half of the game, or they have a rough start in the latter half of the game. They really start to heat up and find themselves back into a game. There have been fewer games where they just come out and play consistently and are able to play with and maintain a lead. And it's more so been so hot and so cold, and it's when they zig, they zag, but it's in the course of a single game rather than a week to 2 week to a month stretch. That it's like two different teams that we're watching all in the span of 2 or 3 periods.
Yeah, it's a tough league. I thought, for example, I thought they played a better game against the Oilers, and they lost 4-1. But it's deceiving. It's interesting how the game could work. They didn't play nearly as well last night, but they still come out with a point in that game. So it's just, I think if you look at the roster, they still have a long way to go in the big picture of Barry Trotz's vision of how do I build a really good team over a 2 to 3 year period. And I think they knew Fisher, who's had a very good year, but he's in a little bit of a drought right now for goals. He's got 2 goals in his last 10 games. And so you see what that does to the offense. When he's not firing, he's not carrying him, he's their best goal scorer. And so if he's not scoring at a certain rate, there's not a lot of other guys that are ready to sort of pick up the slack.
Which is
right?
kind of a concern of ours before Philip Forsberg cooled down a little bit was...
No question.
Who steps up when it's not always Philip Forsberg and Ryan O'Reilly?
No doubt. And so if you're looking at games 51 through 82 that are to come, and they're gonna have a chance to sort of huddle up and say, okay, what's the best thing to do short-term and long-term here as we assess the roster? After 50 games... Luke Evangelista, Phil Tomasino, Juuso Parson, all the guys that we circled that were going to have to be those guys. Tommy Novak. They've been very hit or miss. They have not. None of them have emerged as a rising star. And I don't know if I expected any of them to become a star, but I thought collectively there might be a little bit more at this point. And that's the challenge, as we've been saying all year. Hey, you guys have this unbelievable opportunity to get a chance to play on a team like this, right, that's competitive and is in a race, and you're trying to, earn a big next contract kind of thing. There's a lot of things going on. Tommy Novak, for example, is in a contract year. I think they'd like to keep Tommy Novak, but his value at one point in the season before he got hurt was like, wow, this guy might get a huge raise. He's one of the better bargains in the league. You guys remember talking to Elliot Friedman about that. But he got injured. He's come back. He's been very ordinary for the most part. So these are all the things that go on in a marathon of a season here. But that's going to be the tricky part is you've got Milwaukee that's won 10 in a row. Everybody's excited about what's going on down there. You got 5 first-round picks that are playing for that team. They're all really young. Is it time to try one of them? I don't know. That's a lot to put on one of those guys' shoulders. I'm not even sure who it would be. And is that guy going to be the answer? I don't know. Barry Trotz has said, well, maybe somebody like that could give him a spark, even if it's just for 7 or 10 days. A guy like Denis Gurianov, a former first-round pick in his own right, has some tools. He's got probably the best speed on the team. Last night he's got a chance maybe to win it in overtime. He's got a 2-on-1 with Roman Josi. And he doesn't make the right pass. He could have shot it. It's just a woulda, coulda, shoulda. They come down the other way and score the winning goal, right? That's how close it is to winning and losing. We'd be feeling, hey, great win. You got it in overtime. Gurianov's a great example of you give a guy a chance, right? He's a bargain free agent that you think maybe in a second chance with a different team, maybe a little less pressure on him, maybe you could give him a spark. He's shown flashes, but he's only got 1 goal. So these are all the things that are going on right now and why they've leveled off, and they're 8-9-2. It's not like they've been awful, but they've lost their cushion, and now they're in this really tough pack of teams that are trying to get that last playoff spot.
Well, can you see them bringing up somebody from Milwaukee?
I can.
1 or 2 guys.
Probably not for this game on Wednesday. But I think after the break, because they don't play again until February 10th, right? They've got their bye week and the All-Star break. But I think that's where you have a chance maybe to say, okay, what if we tweak a few things here and just see what it looks like? I've also seen teams, and remember what happened last year. The underachieving, frustrating team, I think, won the last 3 going into the break. And I was like, well, maybe they're getting together. Then they had this break, and they come out of the break, and what happened? I think they lost like 6-1 to Vegas, and everybody's like, here we go again. So the break can really change the energy, right? It can one way or the other. Right. I guarantee you the Kings can't wait to get on their break right now. I think you could come back and be fresh, and all of a sudden you play a lot better. But I do think there's a chance to evaluate the roster there and maybe try something a little bit different when they come back.
And I wanted to get your perspective on this, Willie, because we talk a lot about the young guys and how at some point you're going to have to start transitioning into highlighting the young guys more, giving them more opportunity, allowing them to grow. Philip Tomasino last night, I thought, had a beautiful goal. I thought he had a great first period. But after that first period, we saw him less and less as the game went on. Why? Was there something that I missed there? Was that a strategic decision? Was that maybe something that we should have expected, was to see as little of Philip Tomasino in the latter half of the game as we did maybe in the first period? I saw myself wanting more Tomasino as the game went on.
I get that. They started Tomasino on the 4th line. He had a very good first period. Then they moved Tomasino up with Cody Glass and Tommy Novak to try to get things going. 3 young players. Cody Glass is showing some signs of life. He's strung together a couple good games. He's another guy that I think is really going to be an important player in the last 30. But there was a lot of things that happened. Tomasino is not a guy that you're going to have out there in a lot of defensive situations at this point in his career. He's still very young. He's not on either power play unit, or at least he wasn't last night. And he's not on the penalty kill. And there were a lot of special teams in the game, so that probably shaved off a couple minutes he would have otherwise gotten. And I just think when you're in a really tight game, 3-3 game in the third period, because it got to 3-3 late in the second period, I think Andrew Burnett's a guy that kind of leans on the veterans in situations like that. You see more of the guys that have been through it before. I think that's why. But Tomasino's another really interesting one in the big picture, right? He's been healthy scratched. He's been back. He's shown signs of life, has a great period like that. Yeah. And it leaves you saying, hey, there's more there, right? That move that he makes to score a goal, you're like, yes, that looks like a first-round pick. That's what they need, yes. Yeah. But, it's if you're Andrew Burnett, you're in a dilemma, right? You're in a race. You need points. These guys are really young. So do you throw them into the fire and put them out there and just let them sink or swim and risk losing the game? Like, it felt like the game could get away. UC Saros played really well, I thought, in the third period to keep it 3-3 because the Senators still had the momentum. They were still bringing it in the third period, and Nashville kept them.
My goodness.
Yeah, and the Senators can look like that. I'm telling you, the Senators can look like that on certain nights. Not enough nights. They're very inconsistent. Their confidence rises and falls. They've been one of the more mystifying teams, I think, in the entire league. You look at the preseason predictions, a lot of people had them in the playoffs, let alone, not even close to last place. Yeah. Like, people thought this would be a breakthrough year for them. It just has been a nightmare for them. But you see why last night when you see them clicking like they can. So in that situation, I think there was just a little bit of Andrew Burnett feeling like, I need my veterans out there. I'm going to keep those guys. I'm going to shorten the bench, and I'm going to try to hang on. And that's kind of what happened. They hung on, at least got to overtime, got a point.
Did you agree with that decision?
Well, I think in the moment, yeah. I think you're still saying, I got 2 more games till the All-Star break here, and I got to just find a way to hang on, see if we can get some points, see if we can claw our way to a win here. And I think over time, you hope that naturally Tomasino and those guys jump out there and play so well that they demand more playing time. Keep doing it every night. So it's a tough thing. They've like Yuso Parson, right? I think they were patient. They kept putting them out there. They finally reached a point and they said, we got to start over. Let's send them down, get the confidence back up. I think you've seen that with really all of the young players at one point or another.
The other thing that I stepped away from this game feeling concerned about, and it's not just this game, it's been a trend over the last few games and really something that we've been talking about on and off throughout the entirety of the season. It's the power play.
Yeah, that's another thing.
They desperately need more. 0 for 3 last night on the power play. They're 0 for 13 in their last power play chances.
Yeah, and go back a little bit further. I think it's 2 for 25, 2 for 26. Ooh. And this is the first real stretch, I think, of the whole season where it's gotten a little stale. They were consistent. They weren't a dominant power play, but they were consistently contributing on offense. And I think you circle why they've struggled to score in this last stretch. That's a big, big reason. That is, it's obvious. Yeah. So they've gone from being a team that, okay, you got that one line that's going to drive you, the Nyquist line. Then you've got a power play that's going to help you get a goal most nights. And now you've taken those two things away, and you've got a team that looks very, very vulnerable, right? Because they play a really good system. Most nights they're not getting, for the most part. Now, last night I thought they were on their heels a little bit. But for the most part, even when they're playing a team like the Oilers or the Panthers, who you just saw, they can skate with them. They can hang with them. They're not giving up 45 shots and getting 25, right? They're keeping themselves in games like that. But they've just got to find ways to score and finish plays. And they don't have a team that's full of gifted finishers. Like Ottawa, again, big weaknesses in a lot of areas. Very poor goaltending. But, man, do they have some players who can make some plays. And they should, right? These are high first-round picks. Brady Tkachuk, Tim Stützle. These guys are already they've been paid before they've even actually won, which is a part of the flaw of how they've put their team together. But you see why they've made a long-term investment in the talent, because they can make plays. But winning isn't just about making plays. I'm just using that as an example. The Predators are they're high on character with the O'Reillys and the Nyquists and the Sissons and guys like that, but they're a little short on actual playmakers. They've got Yossi, they've got Forsberg, and really the young guys haven't gotten to that level of playmaker. Does that make sense? Somewhere
absolutely.
in there you've got to have some guys who could just make a play.
So after last night and kind of where we are as a whole, what's kind of the vibe check? Predators find themselves out of a playoff spot for the first time in weeks. So what is the concern level or optimism level, overall vibe check of where we are right now with the Nashville Predators?
I'd love to hear from some of the viewers because, as we said, right, before the season when they were 5-10, hey, this is a reset, trying to do some new things. But then when you get that taste of being above that playoff line for as long as they've been,
expectations change.
You get it. You get kind of excited. You're like, "Hey, this is gettable. This is doable."
When you show what you can do.
Now you see the standings and you're below that line. You're like, "Hey, what? Wait a minute. What's going on?" You know what I mean? I thought that this could absolutely happen, and there's still several chapters to be written.
Yeah.
Here. But I would love to hear what some of the fans think who that have watched this, right? That were excited about the fresh start. I feel like they've had really good energy, so I'd love to hear from them for a little bit. My vibe check is I'm trying to stay even keeled, right? I think this is a big one. Find a way tomorrow night. Find a way, even if they just got a point, and you're kind of stabilized there, and then you regroup, you recharge, and see what happens afterwards. Maybe tweak the roster a little bit because the intrigue is Milwaukee. Milwaukee's got those 5 first-round picks, a couple other prospects sprinkled in there who actually could find their way onto this roster someday. But the question is, how good are those guys? Do you have those elite playmakers that we've been talking about that you need to win? I don't know. They got some really good ones there. Could Kemmel end up being one of those kind of guys? Maybe. But these are questions that won't be answered for a while.
And I think for me, this is a Predators team that is capable of being a playoff team. And once they get in the playoffs, I don't expect necessarily this team to make a run, but based off of where this team was at going into this season, I would say that making the playoffs would be a success. So I'd say this is a team that can make the playoffs, but it has shown that it has some serious flaws. Whether it's depth scoring, whether it's special teams, whether it's wishy-washy goaltending, and also what we've seen over the last few weeks or even months is this is a team that I'll take that back, that might struggle to hold on to leads, that might struggle to find ways to capitalize and might struggle to find ways to win. And I think that is due to a few things, whether it's, lack of depth scoring or the youth on the team, whatever that might be. It's a team that has the makings of being good, but it has some serious flaws. So I do want to get into your thoughts on this coming up next. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Plus, this is just coming out just a few minutes ago from SI.com. This was put out by Pat 40. The headline is Sources, Tennessee under potential NCAA investigation for NIL violations in multiple sports. So let's keep in mind, too, the Vols were under NCAA violation off of the Pruitt era not too long ago, that they were just slapped with an $8 million
They're on double
fine,
secret probation.
Double secret probation. And there was a long list of NCAA violations that Tennessee was just under investigation for. So now this is coming up yet again. I haven't read the entirety of the article, so we can just kind of read this step by step and give our thoughts on that, and we'll do that coming up next. Again, this is breaking news coming out from SI.com and Pat 40. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we are brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We are broadcasting live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. Paul Kuharsky, paulkuharsky.com, will join us in 30 minutes on some Titans coaching changes. But first, and I do want to get into your Predators thoughts, but first I want to get into this article that just came out about 40 minutes ago. So I haven't been able to actually sit down and read word for word exactly what this article says, but this was put out by Pat Forty of SI.com. The headline is, Sources, Tennessee under potential NCAA investigation for NIL violations in multiple sports. He writes, the University of Tennessee is immersed in another NCAA investigation of potential rules violations that is, quote, major in nature, sources tell SI. The case involves multiple sports and includes scrutiny of name, image, and likeness benefits for athletes. And then he gets into how last summer Tennessee was penalized for more than 200 rules infractions within the football program, 18 level 1 violations. The NCAA committee said it was one of the worst infractions that they've seen. I don't know how much of that is true, and I don't know how much of that is really just truly for dramatic effect. But my first question here is, because Pat Forty does not get into exactly what the details are, he says the details are scarce on what Tennessee is potentially facing in the latest NIL case, including the number of involved sports. The school acknowledged that the investigation to SI, but declined further comment other than to say it has not received a notice of allegations from NCAA enforcement, but that the investigation is at least happening. My question here is, what NIL rules are there to break? Because my understanding is the only thing that is a no-go is pay for play. But I do think that there are probably enough things in place in order to, even if you are paying for play, because let's be real, I'm sure a lot of schools are doing that.
It's what's happening.
But it's really easy, I think, to put in writing, hey, we will pay you $8 million in this NIL deal, and all we'll need is a couple of autographs here and there. So I don't know what NIL violations there are to commit that are, per this article, major.
I think the only thing that I see right here is sort of the groundwork. A, they're already on probation for other stuff. So that kind of has them on guard a little bit.
And what
they
probation
did acknowledge,
means is essentially that you're just under a microscope.
Right. But if
we're going to keep an eye on you.
And if you violate again, then maybe the penalty is going to be a lot
harsher
worse.
Penalty.
Yeah.
Yes.
They are aware of the investigation, but I think the quote that they got back, SI did, was this is an area that is vague and contradictory, and I think this is the world we live in with NIL. It's a Wild West. There's no checks and balances, apparently. I think we've all been hoping for some structure to emerge, because essentially what is happening, this is moving so fast, it's becoming a professional league, especially at the very, very top. And I would not put Middle Tennessee and Belmont and Tennessee State and Austin Peay in that category. They are trying to survive in this world, but basically every athlete out there is available for pay. And now, we can get into semantics of how it's going. The method that you do it, I guess, is under question here. But is there any stopping it right now? I don't think the answer is yes. And Tennessee's probably sitting there going, wait a minute. You're going to get after us for NIL? Well, what about XYZ schools that are doing what everybody's trying to do, and that's compete?
Yeah.
And the way to compete is to pay players. I mean, that's what it's coming down to, right?
Yeah, it is.
That's what it is. It's not what it's
competitive
coming
market.
down to. Yeah, that's what it is. It's pay for play. However you try to, dice it or present it to everyone, it's literally pay for play. Unless they're, maybe the violation could be, you ask somebody to do something and it's like a wink. Yeah, we want you to do this, but you really don't have to do it. But you're still paying them for said thing that they're supposed to do or supposed to sign, and they never signed or did it. That could be because essentially what you're doing is you're paying for services not rendered. Maybe that could be. I don't know.
That's what everybody's
doing.
doing.
But
you're telling me everybody is showing up and watering the lawn for somebody, or doing a tweet over at the local pizza joint. That's not what's happening.
But it's not
They're
about
just getting paid.
It's not about what everybody is doing. It's about what I caught you doing, as opposed
true.
to what everybody else is doing. Now we don't know what the allegations are truly, but I would love to see what they are. Are they situations like that where they're asking guys to sign things? They're giving them the money up front, and these guys or girls never sign anything, or they don't go to appearances. I'm thinking if they don't go to appearances, we would know about that, because if you're promoting someone to go somewhere.
Is the NCAA taking attendance?
They could be when you're already on violation. That's just like the drug policy. When you're already already in the system, in a sense. Hey, listen, you may not take another drug again, but we're testing you as if you will. Tennessee is in a situation where they have violated some rules and they got penalized, but they're still in the crosshairs of the NCAA. It's not like wipe your hands up, y'all can go on, we're going to look at somebody else. No, we still have you on our radar just in case you try to do something else.
And I know that other programs and other schools breaking the rules does not justify you breaking the rules. It does not excuse you from being caught from breaking the rules. But I go back to Isaiah Bond. He's a former Alabama wide receiver who is transferring to Texas. He took a visit to Texas, and he posted on his story a video of him in a Lamborghini at the Austin Lamborghini dealership. You mean to tell me that that's allowed? Under the umbrella of NIL,
if he signed some autographs
of not paying for play, like is that allowed?
It's
and
blatant.
I know that that happens at every other program in the Big Ten, in the SEC, but I just go back to I don't know what rules could be violated. But this article does mention that doesn't mean that this is absolutely what it was. I just think that it's a little something, a little there, if it's going to be mentioned in this article. Nico Iamaleava. Pat Forty writes about the $8 million deal. Supposedly that Nico Iamaleava has gotten from Spire Sports, Tennessee's collective. I don't think that it's for nothing that's listed in this article. Nico Iamaleava is from California, which it's a state that it is allowed under California state law that you can start earning NIL money in high school as long as you've signed your national letter of intent. Like, you can start making money in high school. So I don't know how that's any foul play unless there was something within that deal, within that contract, within the collective where there were some wires that were crossed. I don't know. I just think that back in the pre-NIL era, if there was any sort of exchange of a car, an apartment, money, whatever it was, any sort of exchange whatsoever, you knew that was foul play. Now it's all completely a gray area within NIL. Because if there's any exchange, it's hard to prove intent. And it's hard to prove that there were any rules that were broken, because now you can be paid. So it's hard to prove that there wasn't an actual exchange there.
But I'm sure there are rules in place that if you violate them, you violate them. If you don't, you don't. It's not just even though it seems like it's just a free-for-all and, just the wild, wild west out there. I think there are some rules within, the NIL. They may not be rules that anybody give a damn about, but they're there.
And
if you violate them.
I go back to the only quote that is attributed to the NCAA guidance in this evolving area, they call it. Vague and contradictory.
Yeah.
Keyword being
That's
vague.
the NCAA. Vague and contradictory.
Yeah. But here's my thing. This is my thought. Why even bother with these rules? It's such a sham. They're just paying the players.
They're paying
the players. They'll do whatever they have to do now that the Pandora's box is open. It's a arms race. Lane Kiffin called it a salary cap. Every team has got a salary cap, some a lot higher than others. So it's unequal. It's going to create a playing field that is not anywhere close to level. And it's just a professional league. Let's call it what it is. So you can try to say, well, the NIL, there are some rules here and there, and you can't do this, and you got to go appear at Joe's Pizza Shop and try to do this right. It's a sham. It's cash. Yeah. It's paid to the player. You want a quarterback, you go to the portal, you bring a big checkbook, and you're paying the guy. I don't care if it's through this, that, collective, and everything. The coach knows exactly what's going on. The recruiter knows what's going on, and they are poaching the best players and just paying them. It's like everybody's a free agent every year. It's what could have happened in Major League Baseball when the players in the mid-'70s finally got through the courts, the ability to become a free agent. Mm-hmm. In theory, everybody could have been a free agent every year, but they figured out a system to bring some semblance of order back. That's what the NCAA has to do here. This is madness. So, it's only going to get crazier.
But my question is,
we're just starting this stuff.
That's what it is. You're paying players.
So now you're going to try to go out and pick on Tennessee? That doesn't make any sense to me. Tennessee is one of dozens of schools that have a lot of money. They see this game has changed, and they're going very aggressive into this game. Because they're on probation, as you mentioned, D-Mase, maybe they're more vulnerable, and the NCAA is looking around going, we got to try to do something. Where do we go?
That's my problem, is the NCAA knows that it is powerless in this situation. The Supreme Court ruled you cannot limit what a student athlete can make based off of their name, image, and likeness. You cannot have a salary cap. You want a salary cap? Well, then you're going to need a collective bargaining agreement. You're going to have contracts. Then it gets really, really muddy. So the NCAA understands that it is essentially powerless, and the NCAA will do everything in its power to try and flex the itty-bitty baby little muscle that it has left. That's exactly why whenever players apply for exceptions for the one-time transfer rule, the NCAA almost always says no, because we'll stick it to you. And it's not doing anything good for student athletes whatsoever. It just wants to maintain some semblance of power, and I truly don't know. And I don't know the details of this, so it's not maybe fair of me to say that the NCAA has a very weak case here, but it does feel like, based off of what we know, the NCAA has an incredibly weak case. And if Tennessee is doing something, I guarantee you there's 132 other programs in America that are doing the exact same thing.
But to me, this isn't about Tennessee. This is about the system, and I don't like where the system is going. I think it is terrible for college sports. I think it's ruining college sports. In my mind, it really, really is disappointing, and because I think we're only scratching the surface of where this is going to go. And I think it's time to just say, look, if you want to play in this league, let's find the schools that want to do it this way, and just maybe they have their own little professional league. And that's where it's going.
Yeah.
Let's forget about school, forget about everything else. Let's have a little professional league.
They didn't care about school before.
Well, you can make that argument to some degree. I think that's what is sad to me, because I think that if you do it right, you can do it both ways. You can actually get an education, which will be very valuable once you don't make money playing your sport, and very few people actually make real money. And great if you play for a program that is so rich that even the decent players get paid well until age 22. What happens when you turn 22? And you're a fringe NFL player or a fringe professional basketball player, and you are a minor league baseball player. You're not going to make that money. What are you going to do when you're 25? When you're 30? Like that's what nobody's thinking about right now. Well, it's like, oh my gosh, we can make money. We can do all big.
Well, hopefully they made the money and saved it. So.
But how many? But we know that that's not always going to be the case, right?
Well, you would hope
there's going to be some sad stories here.
Obviously, there'll be sad stories across the board, because there's sad stories in professional leagues as well. I just think the NFL sort of they miscalculated where this thing was going. They were arrogant. When they had an opportunity to do something about it, they chose not to. Let's remember, the kids at Northwestern wanted to start a union, and everybody was fighting back against them. Everybody. They shouldn't. They were getting on these kids so bad, when in actuality, you should have let them put together a union, because if they have a union, now it helps you in this situation. Now you can do the collective bargaining. Now you can set up all these things where you can cap this. But you chose not to do it, again, because of your arrogance, and you felt, no, this is our league, or this is a institution, this is higher learning around here, when in actuality I mean, listen, they're athletic students. They're not student athletes. You know exactly what they were. I mean, from the I don't care if you got you aced the ACT or the SAT or you had a 4.0 coming in. When you come in with a scholarship, they look at you as a athletic student, man or girl, man or woman. That's how they look at you, because they're looking at you, what can you do for our university? If you can't do anything for our university, we're not offering you a scholarship. That's basically how it is. Whether it be, an athlete or, someone in academia. If you can't do anything for our university, then why are we letting you in?
It's a fair point. But again, this is put out by Pat Forty of SI.com. Tennessee is under potential NCAA investigation for NIL violations in multiple sports. Very few details on what exactly that means, but we'll get into your thoughts on that coming up next. Also, your thoughts on the Predators' 4-3 overtime loss in Ottawa last night. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, tune into 94.9 The Fan this Thursday. Pre-game at 6:15 p.m., tip-off at 6:30 p.m. with coverage also available on 94.9 The Fan app.
Happy Tuesday, everyone. Listen, I know you just got finished. I know we all just got finished with the AFC and NFC Championship. We can't wait until the Super Bowl on the 11th of February. So, if you want to start your betting or getting your bets in, let's do it with our partners, Zen Sports. And I'm excited to tell you about their introductory promotion available to all new customers in Tennessee. It's the No Danger First Wager. When you sign up for a Zen Sports account, you will receive up to $1,000 No Danger First Wager. When you place your first bet on Zen Sports, you will be reimbursed for the amount of your bet if it loses, up to $1,000 plus. Zen Sports has launched a new VIP program for the premier bettors of Tennessee. If you think you might qualify, then listen up. The VIP program is by invite only. So, if you feel that your Zen Sports play qualifies for a VIP consideration, please check out the program details and apply at zensports.com/VIP. No other sportsbook will offer you a premier sports betting experience with 24/7 top-tier customer support and bigger and better action than Zen Sports. So what are you waiting for, people? Get going and download their app at zensports.com today. Zen Sports, betting just got better. And remember this: gambling problems, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 years or older to bet here in Tennessee.
Tomorrow, it is your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click. If you correctly guess a Preds player that scores a goal in the Preds game tomorrow night, then you will win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Participate with Robbie and Rexroad tomorrow morning at 8:45 a.m. Pick to Click brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold. We'll get right into your phones. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Preds with a 4-3 overtime loss in Ottawa blew a 3-goal lead. Absolute heartbreaker last night. And also, per Pat 40, this coming out that Tennessee is under potential NCAA investigation for NIL violations in multiple sports. And it is important to point out that Tennessee has not been given any notice of allegations pertaining to the NCAA inquiry. But want to get your phones.
Yeah. And also that there are other schools like
Florida and Florida State are also both under investigation as well. Tennessee, just the latest. That's coming out less than an hour ago from Pat 40. Florida State, man. They can't catch a freaking break. My goodness. Allie in Bellevue, Texan, says, just because the NCAA is a sham for the teams and conferences this station focuses on doesn't mean that it's a sham for those that do it correctly. As long as those two groups are under the same umbrella, there have to be rules and regulations. My question is, what are the rules and regulations? And I'm not saying that the rules and regulations are a sham. I'm saying that the NCAA is a sham because I don't think that it protects and looks out for student athletes. For example, this past year, there's a player named Tez Walker who transferred to UNC as wide receiver. He started his career at North Carolina Central. His first year was in 2020, in the COVID year. So that season was canceled. He said, all right, screw this. I'm getting out of here. I want to play football. Transfers to Kent State. He was at Kent State for 2 years. His grandma gets incredibly sick. He's from North Carolina, so he transfers to North Carolina to be closer to his home. Per the one-time rule, he would have had to sit out a year at UNC. So he didn't want to sit out a year at UNC. So he wrote the NCAA, because there are exceptions that the NCAA can give, and said, look, my first season was canceled. I transferred to go where I could play. Then I transferred to be closer to home to help take care of my grandmother. The NCAA said, sorry, no can do. That, to me, is not looking out for a student athlete. That, to me, is not maintaining the integrity of college sports. That's just essentially punishing a kid for taking where his career and personal life needed to take him. So that's what I mean when I say the NCAA is a sham, because I think it just does whatever it can do to impose its force.
It's like, well, we're going to stick to the letter of the law because this is what the law says. So yes, you may have had some unforeseen circumstances that affected you, but our policy is you can only transfer once prior to graduating. If you graduate early, then you could transfer again. But in situations like that, I think do you make exemptions or exceptions?
And they will.
You should make exceptions. But I'm sure there has been situations where that has happened, where they allowed the guy or girl to transfer and be closer to his family. But it's things like that just makes the NCAA look hypocritical. And we're all about the student athlete, but when something like that happens, it's like you're really not about the student athlete.
Right. So put yourself in the new guy's shoes. Charlie Baker, I think is his name.
Yeah.
So he has been a lifelong politician, governor. So he takes this job. He's got nothing to do with what happened before, right? How they got here. And as we know, this went from 0 to 100 in the snap of a finger, right? So he's got no choice but to try to start something. So they had to start somewhere, and you can just sit there, well, the NCAA, blah, blah, blah. Well, if you're him, you're like, look, I can't help what happened before. I'm just trying to do the best I can now. And it's just like trying to put a genie back in the bottle. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So they are really between a rock and a hard place. But I feel like there just has to be a new system here. If we're going here, because think about all of the supplemental things, dominoes that are starting to happen. You've got coaches on burner phones calling around to family members, AAU coaches, youth football, high school coaches, maybe, I don't know, any number of people, back channels. Hey, so-and-so is really good. if he hit the portal, we'd really be interested in him. Is he making any money from the NIL? And it probably goes the other way, too. There's probably players out there going, some people on so-and-so's team are making a lot of money. My kid's not making a lot of money. He's pretty good. Wonder if he could go somewhere else and make some money. Hey, let's make some calls. You think that's going on? That's becoming what it's about. And that is sad to me.
I know,
because
Willy.
it takes your focus off of the big picture.
Because, the big picture is winning, Willy. That's the big picture.
I know. And that's what the coach. So you're the coach, right? You got into coaching because you like shaping young men and winning, right? You try to do both. You create a team. You teach people what it's like to be on a team and go places and try to win together. Now it's a lot more of how much money do I have? Can I keep this guy? I got to go pay this guy. So-and-so's not happy because he's not getting paid as much as the other guy. I mean, it's just we're starting to get further and further away from what you get into it for, and what the point is supposed to be. So I think we should just call it what it is. Let's have a pro league for the top players of that age group, right? So let's just do it. Let's just do it.
What do you mean a pro league and they not
have
go
no
to
rules?
college?
Let's have no rules. You
Where
can just
they not go to college and they just go to that said league.
Let's say it's the University of Michigan club football team. If you want to go to school while you're there, go to school. If you don't care, who cares? Just it's pro. Pay people whatever you want to pay them, or have a league where there's an actual salary cap. Make it equal for everybody in the league.
Well,
have everybody have the same amount of money to spend. Now that's fair competition. I would watch that. I think the fans would still come to the games. You would have the same kind of pride. It just would be more truthful in that, okay, this is what it is. We're not here to go to school. We're here to just play football and entertain our students.
Well, they can.
And if they want to go to school, go to school.
They can't do that, but they're not going to go that far.
It's moving that way anyway.
If they become employees of schools, I would not be surprised to see the SEC and the Big Ten break away. And instead of being under the NCAA, the College Football Playoff will be their governing body. And they will control the College Football Playoff National Championship, which is what it is now. And they will be employees of the school. They'll have collective bargaining agreements. They'll have contracts. And it will be bigger than college football and smaller than the NFL. You'll have the AFC and the NFC, the Big Ten and the SEC.
People have thought for 20 years that it was going to get to that point at some way, even before all the talk of NIL and basically the free agency rule where everybody's a free agent after every season. So I think you could make a league that you could actually make the rules so it's not as crazy. You could have eligibility issues of who can transfer, when they can transfer, how much money you can make.
But it's not going to even be that. It can't be anything that involves the NCAA or school, period. It has to be, if you want to circumvent or kind of, okay, if you don't want to go to school, this is what you do. It has to essentially just be a minor league system. Minus the school. You can't have any affiliation with the school. It just has to be either you can come here or you can go to college.
That'd be fine with me.
One of the two.
Caleb Texan says, Tennessee is on the rise, so they're going to do whatever it takes to keep us behind the Bama and Georgias of the world. Yeah! That's what it is.
But that's what
Go Vols!
Go Vols! They want to keep us down.
That's what always driven everybody. But teams with great fan bases and deep pockets, this is how they're going to try to compete. Why wouldn't you?
Keep you down. The man's trying to keep you down. Nobody wants to see Tennessee achieve greatness. I don't think that's what it is. All right, Paul Koharski, paulkoharski.com will join us coming up next. Titans conducting an offensive coordinator search, plus a little tidbit that Paul had about the defensive coordinator position. We'll get into that with Paul Koharski coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063, The Game, and the Game Nashville app. We are streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every single day. The Titans currently on an offensive coordinator search, maybe a defensive coordinator search. We shall see. Joining us to break it all down is Paul Kuharsky of paulkuharsky.com. PK, appreciate your time today. Enjoyed listening to you and Joe this morning. First, I want to start with the news that you broke about the defensive coordinator position. The Titans are holding on to Shane Bowen for now, but they're still looking at outside candidates for the job. Kind of walk me through that, because I think that's a little bit of an odd dynamic to say, hey, okay, you're good enough for now, but if we find another option, we'll let you know.
Well, I don't think they present it to him necessarily like that. I mean,
that's kind
guys
of
are under contract.
My little summary.
Yeah, guys are under contract for another year from Mike Vrabel's staff, so they don't really have the option to go. And they did give him permission to interview. He interviewed with Jacksonville and with the Giants. Jaguars have hired, Giants have not. Though you would think if he was their man in New York, they would have made their move by now. So you don't. It doesn't look like defensive coordinator opportunities are there for him, though it's still pretty early in the hiring cycle for most of these new coaches. So you don't know what opportunities are going to arise. My sense is he would like to stay. But again, we only know one outside candidate so far, and Denard Wilson, who I think was here yesterday, though I'm not positive on the timeline. I certainly would think they would look at more than one outside candidate as a potential new defensive coordinator, as well as talking to Shane Bowen before deciding what direction they want to go there. And again, they've got competition. Denard Wilson has talked to two other teams, the Rams, and I'm forgetting the other one, and he has some background with the Rams. And so it's just kind of a wait and see, really. And then I think if Bowen isn't here, he may have to step back to a linebacker coach job somewhere. But again, like I said, it's a little bit early.
What was your evaluation of the job that Shane Bowen did this past season?
I think Shane's not a bad defensive coordinator. It's a little bit hard to unravel everything that's gone on with the Titans' defense. He's certainly been better. I mean, we talked a lot about this in the last couple of days when I subbed for Robbie. The better the personnel you have, it's remarkable how much better of a coach you become. So the 2 years that the Titans had, the best defense that they've had, their defensive front, remarkably, was rushing the passer exceedingly well, and it had the best personnel it's had, playing the best it played. Now, how much of a hand did Shane Bowen have in Jeffrey Simmons being healthy and rushing the passer and being disruptive the most consistently he was, and in Danico Autry being consistent, and Harold Landry being healthy, and in Bud Dupree getting healthy and playing his best towards the end of that season. Obviously he called the good plays and things worked the best when they were doing that. And Jonathan Joseph was part of the secondary. They stunk. And I don't know that was a lot to do with Shane Bowen, and I do think it was a lot to do with the people that I just mentioned. So I don't think he's one of the best coordinators in the league, but I don't think he's as bad as he looked that year when they had those bad people either. I like Shane a lot personally, but I'm inclined here with the fresh start with the new coach to feel like I'd like to see a predominantly new staff.
Paul, now looking at this staff and what he has already put together, which is not much, amongst the staff that is still there, who are the more likely candidates to eventually you can see staying on this staff. Now, he's moved away, it seems like, from Charles London, which we thought that would be a no-brainer to keep him because of Will Levis and the relationship that they built, but obviously that's not the case. So beside a guy like that, who else do you see the potential for this for Coach Callahan to keep?
It's really hard, D-Mase, to kind of estimate. I think we all could agree that some of the more intriguing guys were London, who is not going to be back, Terrell Williams, who interviewed for the Chicago defensive coordinator job, as did Chris Harris, didn't get it, so he's still around. Chris Harris came in with a lot of intrigue, didn't have a great deal to work with at corner, and I think he did a good job with Roger McCreary, who I thought was one of the most improved players on the Titans overall, dedicated to strictly nickelback, except when injuries drew him outside. I thought he got a lot better in his second year. I think those two guys are intriguing keeps. The thing is, you don't know who Callahan knows at certain positions, right? And so you would think that's the reason London is out, is because he knows a lot of quarterback guys and offensive coordinator types that he wants to bring in. So does he know as many defensive line guys, or does the fact that he doesn't make Terrell Williams a more attractive candidate to keep? By no means have I, as I've reported, this handful of guys that I know are gone, and I know Frank Perrano, the strength and conditioning coach, survived this initial round of departures. That doesn't mean he's definitely on the new staff. And a lot of these guys are getting conversations with Callahan this week. But it's hard to know what Callahan has available to him, who he knows, who he can get permission to talk to, who got fired from other staffs, or are in similar situations to the guys we're talking about that are hanging loose somewhere else or about to be let go by another staff that he wants. There are just a lot of X factors.
Now, you guys had a conversation this morning, you and Rex, and I thought it was a really good one, honestly, about...
You sound really surprised to hear that.
No, I'm not. I'm not surprised.
That's very surprising that Paul and Joe could have that kind of level of conversation.
Paul and Joe always seem to go at each other, and then they bring in Stilly, as they call him, somehow, some way, and it all gets sideways for a second. But no, you guys were talking about Brock Purdy, and I'm sort of paraphrasing here. If Brock Purdy wins, say they win the Super Bowl, and I mentioned this after hearing, and I mentioned this to the crew. Like, does it change the perception of you needing a elite quarterback to win in today's football? I know what we've seen, and you pointed it out. You were like, when was the last non-elite quarterback to win a Super Bowl? And I think the last one was, I think Joe ended up saying it toward the end of it.
Nick Foles.
Nick Foles. So he was the last non-elite quarterback to win it. But they had a hell of a defense and, hell of a play caller, obviously. But does it change the narrative? And the only reason I'm bringing it up, Paul, is because of Will Levis. Because there's still this, is he the guy, is he not the guy? Well, does he need to be elite in order for the Titans to reach the goal that they want to reach?
I think in the AFC, he's going to have to wind up being elite, or things are going to have to line up very perfectly for you to get through Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, and Lamar. And I'm down on Lamar like everybody else. But to get through, you're going to have to beat two of those guys at least, right, to get to the Super Bowl out of the AFC. So I think in the AFC, odds are your guy's going to have to play at an elite level to get you there. But, I mean, Mahomes just scored 17. Now, he made the plays you need to play, but it isn't like he's gotten the offense to 35 in a must-win game there. So he's elite in that he's doing enough and finding a way to find the plays, not elite in that game in a way that he's dominating the game single-handedly or anything. If Purdy wins, I don't think it reshapes like what you need at quarterback. It says that it's possible with an elite coach, with an elite system, with elite people around him, and a very good defense and all of that, you could win. My side of that conversation was more, if they don't win with Purdy, if they get blown out with Purdy, is Shanahan left in a place like he was with Garoppolo, saying, even with a guy operating my system at a very high level, do I need a guy better than that in order to finish it? And I wonder if that becomes a conversation again after he gets there twice with guys who play very well in Garoppolo and Purdy, but maybe can't quite give him enough. And I think Purdy certainly will get another chance, but I think that's the question that'll stick to the 49ers if they don't win.
And the real question will be when Purdy is ready
Eligible.
for his next contract, is what is he worth,
exactly.
right? 'Cause what do you pay the non-elite quarterback? Quarterbacks on the second contract are expensive, even if the guy's decent, right? So what would you pay?
Paid elite.
Yeah, but if he wins,
paid what the tag says, you get paid whether you're worth the tag or not.
yeah, that'll be a tough decision for them. So Paul, I get this email chain from a guy named Jimmy Shapiro. He sends me more emails than my parents do. I don't know the guy. I've never known the guy. But there's all these. So one was interesting. He sent the odds to win next year's Super Bowl, and the Titans are 100-1, which puts them in a group of teams that are the second longest shot. The Panthers are 150-1. There's another group of teams, 6 or 7. You can probably think of some of them that are 100-1. My question is, if you're the Titans at the top, let's say I put you in charge of that, what would be your messaging with this new regime? It's a new chapter. Would you kind of tag it with rebuild to try to say, be patient with us? And I'm thinking of the Predators when I say this because they kind of did that. And they kind of said, look, we're resetting. Keep your expectations tempered here. We're not tanking, and we'd like to win. But this may take some time to build. Like, if you really look at the roster, they got a lot of holes that they have to build. So what would be your expectation level for next year?
In terms of marketing to fans?
Yes. How would you message it to the fans?
I don't think you can say it, Willie. I just don't. I don't think anybody in the league really can say it. Maybe you say it through your actions if you do what Arizona did last year in terms of dealing draft picks and stockpiling and waiting on an injured quarterback to come back and all of that. It speaks for itself. But I think I don't think you really say anything marketing-wise. I think you let Callahan do your talking, but I think the NFL is built for optimism, right? They won 6 games, which wasn't miserable, even though it gets you the 7th pick in the draft. 6 wins isn't that far away from 8. 8 isn't that far away from 9. 9 gets you in the conversation for that last wild card spot. And the league is built for hope at this time of year. I mean, everybody's already hopeful listening to Callahan. I'm the most negative guy in town, and I can't help but write hopeful things out of what's happened. And if you say anything that hints at patience or wait, I think everybody in town says, well, Houston just went from 3 wins to the playoffs and looked damn good doing it with a new coach and a new quarterback. And your quarterback's got a head start on that quarterback having played half a season. So how could you tell us to wait when your arch rival down in your owner's hometown just turned it around in a year? I'm not going to wait. Look at what they did.
Right. But Houston was bad for 3 years. They were bad for 3 years, not 1 year. So that was
agree.
That was a while.
Fans don't want to have that back and forth and that patience. You know they're unreasonable.
Okay, so my counter to that is, don't you think you're not putting a young coach and a young GM in a good position if you're not being real with your expectation level when you are 100-1 to win the Super Bowl? I get the whole thing, and you're right. There are bounce backs, surprising bounce backs. It's the beauty of the league. The schedule's a little bit easier. There are regressions like the Jacksonville Jaguars every year. There are teams that just get short-circuited injuries, so a lot of things can happen. But I would be careful if I'm up top of billing this as, oh, now we've got everything fixed, when they've got a lot of fixing to do.
I agree. It's hard to why not us at the same time where you say, well, we needed a premier corner, we needed a premier wide receiver, and we needed a premier left tackle and two very good offensive linemen.
You can't get all these guys in one offseason. You can't get all this in one offseason.
Yeah. So they're in a difficult position that way. I'd love to talk to a good marketing person who understands the NFL and kind of ask them, how do you kind of sell the hope and the optimism without overselling in a way that people say, well, you told us, you could be Houston, and why not?
You know that works. That the media uses that a lot, right? Oh, you did. Yeah. They used it against Vrabel this year.
Yeah, I agree that it's a tough spot, but I don't think that you can sell. You're not going to do well at the ticket office if you're selling rebuild. You know what you have to do? You have to sell people. So you're selling Will Levis. You're selling whoever the number one draft pick is, though it's hard to sell Alt because people don't come to watch a left tackle play. You're selling whoever the top wide receiver you get is, and you got to sell Callahan.
Paul Kuharsky is with us. Last one from me, Paul. Kimberly Martin reported that the Titans have interviewed Tampa Bay Bucks quarterbacks coach Thad Lewis for the open OC position, and Nick Holes interviewed yesterday as well, in addition to Eric Studesville. They've at least requested to interview Eric Studesville, the running backs coach and associate head coach in Miami. What stands out, if anything, about those three candidates for the Titans open OC position?
Well, Lewis has a Rams connection, right? And Studesville is a running back guy by nature. So those are the two biggest things that stand out to me. So on the Eric front, I'm a little cautious there because in the Callahan triumvirate there, I'd like to see he and an offensive coordinator and a quarterback coach all rooted in the pass game or with some touchstone stuff for Will Levis. And then you're obviously going to have a run game guy who's your running back coach and maybe your run game coordinator. But, without knowing a ton about these guys, I think everybody would be more excited if that second guy was a Brian Callahan to Brian Callahan, Zach Taylor now. And I'm still very curious about Thomas Brown, who I think is getting some interviews and probably winds up a play caller somewhere. But if he doesn't get a play calling job, that's a guy I'd still keep an eye on. So I don't know. And we need some more defensive names to surface along with Denard Wilson as well. I think names will start to creep out now as the Titans ask for permission around the league and as some of these other staffs begin to shake out as well.
Great stuff, PK. Appreciate you for joining us. Will you be on with Robbie and Joe tomorrow morning?
I will. I won't be getting up as early, so I'm back in the traffic that we joked about, but at least I'll wake up at a normal hour.
It's not too bad. I'll take sleeping in with a little bit of traffic.
Yeah, me too.
All right, Paul, appreciate it.
Guys.
Thanks for joining us. Paul Kuharsky, paulkuharsky.com. There's one thing that Paul touched on there that you brought up, D-Mase, about what if Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers are able to take down Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, what does that say about the quarterback market? And we'll get into that coming up next. And, of course, your thoughts as well. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we're brought to you by Zen Sports, and we love our people over at Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet.
All right, let's tell you about Loan Pronto, as we've been saying, they've got 2 ways to help you right now be in a better financial position. Mortgage rates have come down a lot in the past couple months, and so you need to strike while the iron is hot. They're helping people in 2 ways. If you, number one, had a bad mortgage rate that you got stuck with last year when the rates were higher, you can refi now and get into a much better spot. Much better spot. They've got fixed rates with the APR in the 5s, and they can do it fast with no appraisal, no closing costs. So lower that payment. It's going to save you hundreds of dollars every month. Get on that right now. 615-499-5780. Or option 2, if you still have a really good primary mortgage rate from years past, stay locked into that. But if you still need cash, you can pay off the old credit card bill, the other high-interest loans that have got you paying too much extra money here that you don't need to pay. Loan Pronto can get you hooked up with an express equity line of credit at a great rate. Keep that main mortgage intact. So 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Get on it. It's the place to call. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781, subject to lender approval.
The love, the brotherhood, it's real. It's the NFL. I guess you could say it's a business, but guys care about each other in this locker room and what we've been through. And we got a core group of guys that have been here for the last couple of years and the standard and culture that they've built. And then the guys that Kyle and John brings in, like everyone fits that mold. And, you know, it showed tonight in a huge moment. Like if you're down 17, you got to care about each other and you got to love each other to get a comeback and going. And so I think we showed that tonight.
That was Brock Purdy after the NFC Championship game. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. 102.5 and 106.3 The Game is officially inviting you to our first ever Super Saturday. Join us Saturday, February 10th at New Heights Brewery in Nashville from 1 to 5 p.m. for this fun, family-friendly Soup Fest. Benefiting the Nashville Predators Foundation, you can enjoy live music, games for kids, and come sample soup from Mafiosa's, 615 Chutney, Westin Hotel, Jasper's, and so much more. To purchase tickets and to see all participating restaurants, go to theGameNashville.com/soup. You can also enter to win tickets to Super Saturday. Just text in the keyword soup, S-O-U-P, right now to 615-737-1025. So appreciate Paul Kuharski for coming on in the last segment. And one thing that you brought up to him, D-Mase, was perhaps how the perception of quarterbacks could change if Brock Purdy and the 49ers beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. We know the NFL is a copycat league, that there's going to be so many teams across the league that try to mimic whatever that team did to win it all. For example, the Rams threw the bag at Matthew Stafford, traded Jared Goff and all the picks and all the players to the Detroit Lions in order to get Matthew Stafford, and they won the Super Bowl. So the Denver Broncos turn around the next year and do the same thing with Russell Wilson. Didn't work out as well for the Denver Broncos and Russell Wilson. It's a copycat league. Everybody wants to do and mimic whatever that team did to win the Super Bowl. Right now, the perception is you need the elite quarterback because who has won or gotten to a majority of the Super Bowls over the last 10 to 15 years? It's been Tom Brady. It's been Patrick Mahomes. It's been that guy. It's been the elite quarterback. I don't think anybody views Brock Purdy as an elite quarterback.
See, I challenge that a little bit. Like,
Really?
what's not elite about Brock Purdy? Take away where he was picked in the draft. Just take away. What's not elite?
I don't think that Brock Purdy can do what Patrick Mahomes does in overcoming
Does anybody
deficiencies
do
across the roster.
what Patrick Mahomes does?
But what I mean is, whenever you trade away Tyreek Hill and you have a wide receiver core that simply cannot hold on to the football, Patrick Mahomes can still win you football games.
Okay,
Joe
fair.
Burrow, I think, is another one that can elevate everyone else around him. If Brock Purdy doesn't have Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, and Brandon Ayuk, are they in the Super Bowl?
Probably not. I mean, but on one hand, that's not his fault. But on the other hand, you can understand why people, because when you think of the San Francisco 49ers, you don't think of Brock Purdy. You don't. You think of Christian McCaffrey first, Deebo Samuel,
Nick Bosa even.
Nick Bosa, Trent Williams, Ayuk, and then Brock Purdy's the
yeah, by the
quarterback.
way, they have
Oh,
a
no, it's Shanahan. Then it's Brock Purdy.
Right.
The quarterback.
And that is absolutely the perception.
Yeah.
I'm just, and it's a lot because he was drafted in the last round.
Right.
He is one. I think there are some elite things about him, but when we look at the elite quarterbacks, we look at them and say everything about you is elite. Everything, from awareness to accuracy to playmaking ability, everything about you is elite. That's why there are only so few of them. Really, there's honestly one, and that's Patrick Mahomes. I know Joe Burrow has done it, but he hasn't done it consistently.
Honestly,
me.
he can't stay healthy.
Yeah, he has all of the traits, but he hasn't done it consistently. Even when he wasn't injured, they still end up getting beat.
And the reason why I at least view Josh Allen in a different class as Patrick Mahomes is Josh Allen makes the fatal mistakes that Patrick Mahomes simply does not make.
And that's why I am hesitant to put Josh Allen in that category. There's only one elite quarterback to me in this league right now, and that's Patrick Mahomes.
So that's a pretty high standard there, because we're talking about one of the greatest of all time. Now Mahomes is starting to get into that strategy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, even Lamar Jackson, he's not an elite quarterback. He plays elite at times, big games during the season, but an elite quarterback, you have to do it consistently over a period of time. Those quarterbacks that we talked about, Josh Allen, Jackson, Burrow, they haven't done it like Mahomes has done it for a period of time. Mm-hmm. We looked at Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. First, it was just Peyton Manning. And then not even after the first Super Bowl, it wasn't until I think the second Super Bowl where people started to realize, like, this Tom Brady kid might be good. Because even in the first Super Bowl, people were saying they shouldn't have went because that was a fumble and they should have never made it. That was the narrative, which it was right. That was a fumble, and they shouldn't have an opportunity. It wasn't until the second one where he started making plays in the Super Bowl where people started to think, okay, this kid might be that guy. Because for the longest, it was just Peyton Manning. And then obviously he came into the mix, and then Drew Brees came into the mix. But my thing with Brock Purdy or any other quarterback, because I'm looking at since 1997, it can be won without an elite quarterback. And when I mention these names, people are going to think, like, what in the hell is wrong with you, Derek? John Elway won 2 Super Bowls. Do we consider John Elway elite?
Yeah.
He wasn't elite then. He was at the back end of his career. He finally had a hell of a running game, and he had a hell of a defense. And those 2 receivers he had were young, and they were studs, McCaffrey and Rod Smith.
Yeah.
So
and I would even throw
Shannon Sharp was there.
I would throw Peyton Manning's title with the Broncos. He was definitely not elite.
He wasn't elite, and
he could barely throw the ball 10 yards.
Exactly.
It was tough.
So he had an elite mind,
right?
But from a physical standpoint, he didn't have it anymore. You can see it in the game. He could barely throw the ball 15 yards down the field.
But also, how different is now versus then? It's a different league.
It's a different league, but it's still the same premise. Like, Elway 2 Super Bowls, even though Elway was the MVP, he wasn't at an elite
he wasn't
level.
Playing
he
at an
wasn't
elite
like
level.
the Elway that we knew prior to that.
He was the old Jedi Master.
Exactly.
So what's kind of maybe the similarities we could draw from those teams? Peyton Manning's teams, Brock Purdy's team now.
Defense and running a game.
Defense, running game, protecting the quarterback, and a quarterback that can do just enough not to blow it.
So
right, and really knows the system, knows exactly what you're trying to do, plays into the Shanahan system well. I'll give you 2 more examples I thought of on the other end of the spectrum of are they elite. When Tom Brady came in for Drew Bledsoe and won the Super Bowl, was he elite?
No, he wasn't elite then.
Not that year.
No.
He hadn't become elite yet. So I think Purdy's kind of at that stage, right? Or is he blossoming? I'm not saying he's going to be Tom Brady, but is he just becoming that surprise guy who just is the Rubik's Cube guy? Just he knows he's going to be able to win, even though he's not as athletic or physically gifted. The guy can run a little bit.
Oh, yeah, he can.
I mean, how many times does he make some timely runs on
NFC
Sunday?
game.
My gosh. So he's sneaky good in terms of his athleticism. Joe Montana, when he first came up with the 49ers, not a first-round pick, not a day 1 starter, and the tag on him was, well, he's just running the Bill Walsh offense. And he's got really good players.
He ran it to perfection.
That's the thing. So I don't think Joe Montana won or was one of the greatest of all times because he had the best arm or could really run. But there was 2 things. So he didn't have elite traits like that, but he was elite. So I'm just wondering, are we too early to just to say that Purdy is not elite? Because he led the league in QBR. He led the league in passer rating. Like, you can go right down. His stats are elite. His stats are absolutely elite.
I'm not willing to put that label on him quite yet. Now, if he wins the Super Bowl this year, comes back next year, and starts to elevate his team even more, then we can have that conversation. But I do wonder, as it pertains to Will Levis, what does that mean for him in this conversation? Because if
I would love to see Levis lead the league in passer rating and then have that discussion.
But I would also love to see what Levis looks like when he has around him what Brock Purdy has around him. That Titans O-line is not the San Francisco offensive line. You don't have a Christian McCaffrey or a Brandon Ayuk.
Right, but for any quarterback to really do it, you got to have some kind of supporting cast, right?
Well,
Patrick Mahomes
you
doesn't.
have
Oh,
to.
he's got a good support. That's
He's
a great
got
defense.
Travis
His
Kelce.
support-
That's a great defense. He's got a great defense.
he
And he's got a
doesn't
great
have-
play caller.
If Patrick Mahomes had what Brock Purdy had,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that team would lose a game. I think they would blow
Right.
everyone out by 100 points.
I think what.
So I'm saying the perception of the quarterback
Mm-hmm.
right now is you need an elite quarterback. You need a Mahomes. You need a Burrow. You need a Rodgers.
But you don't.
But and right now the Titans don't.
Well, I mean, we don't
Titans
know.
don't
Yeah, we
have
don't
that.
know what the Titans have at this point because we like some of what he did. We didn't like some of what he did. But if you just look through the NFL, and Paul was right. You may have to be elite in the AFC, considering who's in the AFC. Just elite quarterbacks and damn good quarterbacks. So you have to be sort of in that upper echelon. But even in the AFC, the NFC is a little bit easier, I would say, to get to the Super Bowl, even though
not
you got to
as
go
many
to San
elite
Francisco.
quarterbacks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But even with that, I just look at like the history of the league, and elite quarterbacks gives you a better opportunity to win if you don't have a great supporting cast. They elevate everybody. But you don't have to have an elite quarterback. I consider Eli Manning a damn good quarterback, but I don't consider him elite. He's won 2 Super Bowls, okay?
Also different NFL now.
Russell Wilson, he's not an elite quarterback, but he won a Super Bowl. What did those 2 guys, Nick Foles, he's not elite, but he won a Super Bowl. I don't think Matthew Stafford's a damn good quarterback, damn good, but he's not elite. But what did all those quarterbacks have in common? They had a damn good defense and a really good coach, and they could run the football. That's what those 3 teams had. All of those teams. Look at the New York teams. Hell of a defense. And they ran the ball just enough to beat teams, and they made the plays when they needed to be made. Russell Wilson, hell of a historical defense. And they should have won it 2 years in a row, but they went outside of who they were and tried to throw the football with a non-elite quarterback. So you have those guys. Matthew Stafford the same way. That was an elite defense that he played with.
And a great supporting cast.
Great supporting cast. So it can be done, but like Vrabel said a long time ago, and when he said it, everybody was like, no. And what did I say? He said what he said, and he meant it. Like, our quarterback is good, but in order for us to win, we have to be great around him. And then he tried to walk it back. No, you were telling the truth.
yeah, but
that
it's
was
true.
the truth.
Yep.
If you're not going to have that Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady type of quarterback, or Drew Brees or Manning, then everybody else around that quarterback has to elevate their game even higher. That's why Kirk Cousins is having a tough time, because he only had one guy, Jefferson, that and Cook, but Cook was often injured. He didn't have enough around him because he's not elite. I think he's a damn good quarterback, but he's not elite. But he didn't have enough around him to elevate him even further. If he had 1 or 2 more pieces in a defense that typically is historical or close to historical, then he has a better shot at winning a Super Bowl. But because he doesn't, then he's going to get to the playoffs and ultimately do what they did every year when he got them in the playoff. What? They end up losing in the first or second round. High-scoring offenses, but because they don't have that great supporting cast other than maybe 1 or 2 guys, they can't get the job done.
I love this debate. We need to come back to this because we have to bring in the salary cap part of this too, because that's a huge part of the equation.
Because kind of looking around at the non-elite quarterbacks, the quarterbacks that we view as not elite, what does that mean for the Titans? And what has history shown us needs to happen in order to get the most out of a quarterback that might not be viewed as quote-unquote elite? We'll get into that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan tomorrow as Vanderbilt men's basketball takes on Auburn on the road. Pre-game at 7:30 p.m., tip-off at 8 p.m. with coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app. So Brock Purdy gets the San Francisco 49ers to the Super Bowl, and it does feel like, and we were talking about this at the break, it does feel like to me for the second year in a row, it is the elite quarterback with maybe not the deepest roster versus probably a more complete roster with the quarterback that's not necessarily elite. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs last year against the Eagles that I thought top to bottom were probably the best roster in the National Football League with a quarterback that was playing at an incredibly high level, but before that season, we were talking about, is Jalen Hurts even a starter in the NFL? Now you fast forward to this year, same kind of situation. I think that San Francisco 49ers have top to bottom probably the best, if not one of the best rosters in the NFL against a Chiefs team that's really Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and everybody else.
I think that is the great discussion around the elite. I think it's a great debate because what Mahomes has done, I think this might be a great definition of what really is elite. Mm-hmm. Elite is when you're making the huge money and you're taking up a big percentage of the salary cap. Are you still elevating everybody else and getting to this? That's where Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers and the best of the best are really separating. I'm not sure Purdy, we don't know yet, but I don't know if Purdy's going to be able to do that at that level. Mm-hmm. And he's working his way towards a pretty handsome second contract, right? Mm-hmm. And they have to decide what that's worth.
Right.
So can he elevate everybody else? At that point, I don't know. But he is playing at an elite level for this offense. If you look at the stats, they're cooking. Like he's at the top of every yards per attempt. Like you don't think of him as this big arm guy, but their yards per attempt, which is really the measure of what are you getting every time you drop back, far and away, number one. Better than Mahomes, better than all of those, not even close to anybody else in the league. So it's a really intriguing thing. But he's on that first contract. Mm-hmm. So they have more money to go get a Christian McCaffrey, to go, get the big, who did they get? Chase Young. They made a big deal for him in the middle of the season. They're loading up.
The best move for them in the middle of the season.
But it's just an added little sprinkle. It's like the Rams a couple years ago. They just add those guys
at the end,
and it helps to load up and go for it.
Move.
Yeah. So I see the 49ers as a team that's done a really good job to put themselves in this spot. And I see that Kansas City is Mahomes trying to elevate, along with Andy Reid, the rest of the group, right? They're trying to get – they can look kind of ordinary certain weeks. Even last week, they only scored 17 points, right? They made the key plays at the key time. But Mahomes wasn't like – leading this well-oiled machine to 35 points in a win. Like, the Ravens just kind of handed them the game, I think.
Well, Ravens made their adjustments in the second half from a defensive standpoint, and it pretty much stifled anything that Andy was trying to do from an offensive standpoint. But he did enough, and then he made the play, the one play he needed to make in the second half. It was third down and I think 3 or 4, and they needed it. If they don't get it, Baltimore gets the ball back. He completes a 30-yard pass to Valdez-Scantling, who has dropped more balls than I probably caught this
when
season.
They needed a big play to close the game, he made it.
He made it, and that's what separates Mahomes from every other quarterback. To me, there's only one elite quarterback in today's NFL, and it's Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. And I base that upon what his longevity and what he has consistently done. Joe Burrow, he's going to be elite, I believe, one day, but he hasn't reached it yet. Josh Allen, he may get there.
He makes too many mistakes.
He may get there, but he has to beat Mahomes. He has to be, even if he makes it to the Super Bowl, if he doesn't go through Mahomes, people are still going to say he's not elite.
Right.
He for some reason, he got a chance not to play Mahomes. That's why he's in the Super Bowl.
And Allen and Dak Prescott and Burrow, and then next year it'll be, why am I blanking on the kid from the Chargers? Herbert. They're making that second contract. So now it's on them. Like, they're making it, so they have to be elite to win. So that's the tough part. So I think, though, that what I'm prepared to say about Purdy is his stats are elite. I'm not saying – I think you got to really be elite, you got to do it for 4, 5, 6 years. You got to show you can do it on the second contract. But I think we're shortchanging Purdy if we're comparing him to Brad Johnson or Trent Dilfer, or if we're just saying,
no, I think he's better
win the
than
Super
those
Bowl
guys
without the elite quarterback. You have a quarterback that's playing elite level football right now for his team. The stats show that.
He played
far and away number one. I'm not talking about he's in the top 10 kind of thing. He's number one.
But I'm saying in the playoffs, Lau, listen, if we're basing it upon that, then Lamar Jackson is elite because he's been able to do it during the regular season. But when he's gotten the playoff, for whatever reason, he hasn't played well. And he needs to step his game up if he wants to be mentioned in the same breath of Patrick Mahomes. That's just like these other quarterbacks that we deem elite, but they don't have those elite sort of moments in their career. Burrow doesn't have that elite moment in his career. Josh Allen does it. Jackson does it. You can be elite during the season, but what separates Tom and Mahomes is what they were elite in the playoffs when they needed it. Like when we went up, the year they went up against one another, both of those guys were elite. It was just one guy the defense jumped off sides and gave the other elite another opportunity to score a touchdown, and he scored a touchdown. But there's no mistaking that Patrick Mahomes has done enough to be considered an elite quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
No one else has done that. So can the Titans get to where they want to get without having an elite quarterback? I think they can, but people around the personnel around them or around him needs to be elevated.
It's about the supporting cast.
Yes.
Because how much have we said throughout this entire season, well, Will Levis did this, and this was good, and this was not so great, but also, he had 2 seconds to drop back before his butt was on the ground, this was a great throw, but then it got dropped. He doesn't have the supporting cast around him. And it does make me think, do we maybe as a football society write off quarterbacks too quickly because they don't have that supporting cast around them, or they don't have the right coaching staff in place that, is basically an environment of stability? I think about Baker Mayfield. We were so quick, at least I was, Browns were, so quick to write off Baker Mayfield as a bust. And even though we had OBJ and Jarvis Landry around him, how many different offensive coordinators and head coaches did he have?
Too many.
Too many. Then now we see what he did in Tampa, and I didn't say an elite season in Tampa, but got him to the playoffs when I thought that team was going to finish last in an absolutely crap division. So maybe we write off quarterbacks too quickly, and we don't, as a football society, I say we, don't put the right pieces around the quarterback to be able to get the most out of the quarterback. So I think now that the onus is on the Titans, on Rand Carthon and Amy Adams-Strunk, whip out the checkbook. Put the right supporting cast around Will Levis. Give him some protection. Give him some time. Give him some receivers that will catch the ball, reliable receivers. And then we can see what Will Levis can do. I don't know if Brock Purdy is an elite quarterback or if he is playing at an elite level because he has elite pieces around him. But I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if anybody knows the answer to that. But they're in the Super Bowl regardless because they got a whole heck of a lot around him. We'll continue this conversation coming up next. Do you want to get into your phones as well? 615-737-1025 is the phone number. We've talked a lot about analytics for a few reasons. Because Dan Campbell used a lot of analytical decision-making, and that ultimately, for whatever reason you want to say, cost the Lions the NFC Championship game, cost them a trip to the Super Bowl. Bill Barnwell had a breakdown of exactly what those decisions were, how analytically driven were they, was it the right decision, was it the wrong decision, and I think that it's an appropriate discussion to have because this is now more of a direction that the Titans are going down, more of a focus on analytics. Brian Callahan is maybe a more analytically focused head coach than Mike Vrabel was. So we'll get into the analytics discussion coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063, The Game and the Game Nashville app. We are streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every single day. Do you want to get into some analytics talk? Brian Callahan, what he mentioned about analytics, how the Titans are making more of a push for being a more analytically driven football team. But Tom Pelissero tweets that the Steelers are expected to hire former Falcons head coach Arthur Smith as their offensive coordinator. I think it's a good move. Go from Matt Canada to Arthur Smith.
Yeah.
That's an upgrade.
Definitely. Well, some people may say no because they look at what happened.
Falcons fans might say no.
Yeah, Falcons fans may say, you may be a little bit cautious there with hiring Arthur Smith as your coordinator. But I think when you become a head coach and, again, you try to be the coordinator too, it's difficult. And I think Arthur found it out. It's a difficult challenge. And maybe he's just one of those guys that is better suited to be a coordinator and a damn good coordinator. So.
And your job is made even more difficult when Desmond Ridder is your quarterback.
Exactly. Yeah. Man, oh man.
Yeah. So good move, and good move, I think, by the Steelers. Happy to see Arthur land somewhere.
Yeah.
Right up the street.
Hope he does well.
Yeah. Well, right down the street.
Finally, they can use Pat Fryermuth at tight end and the passing
Well, up
game.
the
Okay,
street,
I'm glad you
Pittsburgh,
brought
I'm
that up
thinking
because
Atlanta.
I was saying this at the break. I'm confused about Arthur Smith and his tight end philosophy. Because look at what he did with Jonnu with the Titans. It was great. Jonnu was a massive part of this offense. He goes to Atlanta. He has Kyle Pitts, the highest drafted tight end in the history of the NFL. I didn't notice Kyle Pitts one single game this season. So I don't know what that is, but we shall see. So Bill Barnwell put out a full breakdown of why the Ravens lost, why the Lions lost, kind of his perspective of the AFC and NFC championship games. And he breaks down why the Lions lost. And I'm trying to pull this up. Breaks down kind of the analytics of it all. First and foremost, one thing that I was wondering, because we talk about how going for it and not going for it, that's an analytically driven decision. And I think about it like maybe it's not. Maybe it's just the head coach just made a decision. So one thing that Bill Barnwell brings up in this article is, did the analytics say that the Lions should have gone for it on those fourth down tries? Barnwell writes, ESPN's fourth down decision data suggests they were very slightly situations in which the Lions would have been better off going for it. The first decision in the third quarter favored going for it by 0.3%. The second, down 3 points in the fourth quarter, favored going for it by 0.2%. So both situations, the Dan Campbell decided to go for it rather than kick the field goal. Very, 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 a toss-up.
Yeah, it's a flip of the coin
A
almost.
flip of the coin. Barely even.
So that's where feel, specific game situation,
Yep.
your people, your belief, the crowd, the situation in the game. It's just, I think this is a great discussion because we say analytics. Analytics can go all kinds of different directions. It could be how you evaluate a player who's playing in college, right? But so it's a broad term, but like game situation stuff, it's fascinating. But it comes back to what's in the coach's head and heart at the time, right? So, but that's a great example of it's debatable. Whichever one you choose to do, you're going to get debated on it, right? We had a vehement disagreement yesterday on all three of these situations, right?
Right, and what Bill Barnwell writes is what the analytics don't account for is, are you a better offensive team than you are a defensive team? What it does not account for is the fact that the Lions' strength is their offense, is the fact that the Lions' offense, for majority of the first half, it was cooking. So that is where feel comes in. That is where context of the game comes in. And Bill Barnwell supports Dan Campbell's decision to go ahead and go for it because that is, in fact, the Lions' strength. But one thing that isn't pointed out in this article is the context of the score. I don't know if analytics keep that in mind of if you're up by 2 scores, should you be more conservative? Should you go ahead and take the points? Does postseason and a trip to the Super Bowl on the line come into consideration into this? And that's something that Bill Barnwell brings up. Should you be more conservative if it is the postseason? And Bill Barnwell writes, well, I don't see why not. I don't see why you would be more conservative in the postseason than you would in the regular season, and I totally understand that argument. But what isn't brought up here is the score. Of you're up 2 scores, try to maintain it rather than being a little bit more aggressive. But there's one part in here that I do want to get into that Bill Barnwell writes, talking about the crazy, weird Brandon Ayuk touchdown. It goes off Vildor's helmet, and Andy Ayuk, catches it off the helmet. That turns into a
Incredible
touchdown.
Play.
Fluky, weird thing when we talk about the ball bouncing your way, ball bouncing one way or another. That is the exact example. Bill Barnwell writes, for a second, pretend that Campbell kicked the field goal to go up 17. So that was the first instance. In the third quarter, they're leading 24-10, decide to go for it on 4th and 2. Jamison Williams drops the pass. Says, what changes about this fluky play? Does Vildor have more confidence up 3 scores and catch the pass? Does it fall harmlessly to the ground? Was the pressure of having to come up with the stop after a failed 4th down so stressful that he tried to catch a pass with his face mask? Does Purdy not have... So he goes on and on and on into these crazy hypothetical situations.
We're getting into the metaverse now.
We're getting into the alternate universe where everybody has 3 arms and 1 leg. But...
I'm not going that far with it.
But my point is,
it's a fair thing. The game is played by humans, right? The humans react to the situation. You have to trust your people, and it's not just like, here's the situation. Computer says go for it. It's not that. It's a series of things.
And
right?
look, does that change that play? Probably not. Gravity's a weird thing, fluky things happen. But what does change is, maybe you have 3 more points on the board. So it's a really interesting article. And Bill Barnwell writes, did the Lions lose the game Sunday night because they didn't get any points from those 2 situations? Of course. Did Campbell's decisions hurt the Lions' chances of winning and put them in an actively worse position? No. But I don't know if I can definitively answer that question. And I think it brings up a really good philosophical conversation about analytics. And now that is going to be, it seems, more of a focus for the Titans moving forward. We're not going to know the answer to this, but I do wonder, what would Brian Callahan's approach be if he was in Dan Campbell's shoes?
That's the $1 million question, I guess. But I think analytics is not just the play on the field or a particular moment. I think it's the totality of what you're trying to accomplish as an organization. How do you evaluate players from college, bringing them in? Does they fit your system? If this is the system that you run, we always go back to Rand Carthon and him evaluating the running back and saying, listen, he's the best outside zone running back in the draft based upon analytics. And what does San Francisco go do? They draft him, and he has a really good season. Why? Because he fits the system that they're running. So I don't think analytics is just game day.
Right. It's
situation.
only one of many facets.
It's one of many factors.
Yes.
And I think the Titans want to gear more toward the analytics part.
In the big
picture.
sense of it,
Exactly. Not just on game day.
Would you go for
right.
it? Yeah.
Yeah, because you're right. There are some.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's some situations. There's going to be, the analytics are going to say, don't go for it because it's 4th and a long 3, and you don't need to be going for it. Maybe it's the 3rd quarter. You still got time to kick it or try to kick the field goal, not make it. You still got an opportunity to come back and score. Well, if that is indeed the case, me as a head coach, I got to look at it from this standpoint too. Yeah, I see the analytic numbers. I understand what they're saying, but how does my team look right now? Do they look like a team that can get a 4th and long 3? If we've been struggling all day, I'm kicking that thing away or I'm kicking a field goal, one of the two.
Right.
But if we've been marching down the field as the Lions were, 4th and 3 doesn't look bad at all. Why? Because there hasn't been anything they've done to stop our offense. Everything that has stopped our offense is because of us dropping passes or fumbling the ball, stuff like that. So
like
I
Vrabel
feel
deciding to kick a field goal against the Saints down 7.
Exactly.
I didn't have a problem with that because you couldn't move the ball.
Absolutely. I can't move the ball, and I know the analytics says, well, go for it. But no, I'm not going for it. Let me kick the field goal. We hope that's the way that Coach Callahan sort of sees the game. Like, yeah, the analytics are there, and it may favor going for it, but man, it's 4th and 3. We haven't been able to we haven't been able to get a yard all day.
Right.
And so
eye test.
I'm not going for it as much as I want to. I'm not going for it. I'm going to kick the field goal. And if we miss it, then I'm going to get on the podium and say, listen, did y'all see our offense today? We wasn't moving the ball. So we decided, I know the analytics said kick it. I mean, the analytics said go for it, but we decided to kick it. Why? Because our offense wasn't moving the ball the way we thought we were going to be able to do. So why go for it? Just kick the field goal.
I do think that is a very important point you're making, D-Mase, that when we're saying analytics or, hey, I think the Titans are moving in the direction of using more analytics. We are not talking just about, and really it's a very small percentage, about game situation analytics. Mike Vrabel was using analytics to help shape his decision on a certain day, but he wasn't tied to them, but he was using the analytics, like the game in Miami where he decided to go for 2. They were down 14. They scored, went for 2, scored, and only had to kick the 1. That was
the very trendy thing to do right now.
The trendy thing to do. But that was, at least analytics were brought into the discussion. That's kind of a new way of thinking with win probability involved, right? But he decided to do it. But he's his own man. He's going to make that decision. This is the kind of thing that's been going on in other sports for a little longer time, right? I'll give you 2 examples. Baseball, like the whole Moneyball thing, analytics is also used to decide what a player is worth, right? How much value do you assign to this position, this player? That's where analytics maybe is even more important. Not just, hey, you know what? We've decided we're not going to sacrifice bunt because over time you're not going to score as many runs as if you didn't sacrifice bunt. You know, that there's that age-old debate. But still, in baseball, there are times where even though in the long range it's not smart to bunt, sometimes you need to put a bunt down and put pressure on a defense and move the guy to second base. Here's another one. In basketball, or let's say you're up by 3. Do you foul the 3-point? Do you foul the guy and put him on the line to shoot 2 free throws rather than to let him shoot a 3-pointer? Right? Or if you're down by 2 and there's 3 seconds left, do I try for the 3 for the win at the buzzer, or do I take a 2-pointer to tie
Take
it?
it to OT.
Right? The analytics would tell you to shoot the 3. Go for the win. Because not only do you have to tie it, but you got to win the 5-minute overtime. So there's a lot of things to think about there.
Do the analytics account for the fact that this might not be a very good shooting day?
That's one part of it.
That's as a coach.
Am
what
I
you
on
have,
the
what
road?
decision you have to make.
Am I the underdog? Do I have 3 guys who have 4 fouls who are going to maybe foul out in overtime? These are all the other things that the analytics, the win probability does not factor in. So this is a sports-wide issue when it comes to game situation. But when we're talking analytics, it's so much more broad than just the situational play at the end of a game.
And when it comes to the Titans, and when it comes to Brian Callahan, and when the question is, how would Brian Callahan approach that situation? I don't know, because we've never seen Brian Callahan as a head coach. We've never seen him as being the one that makes that decision to go for it or not. I don't think Zach Taylor is known to be a super go for it or a super conservative coach. I would say when it probably falls somewhere in the middle of goes for it sometimes if it makes sense, doesn't go for it other times if it doesn't make sense. But Brian Callahan is his own coach. I would say that Dan Campbell, Brandon Staley, when he was with the Chargers, they're known as the go for it guys. We're going to go for 2 on most touchdowns. If it's 4th and 4 or less, we're probably going to go for it and try to pick up the first down. They're known as the very go for it kind of guys. There's probably some coaches in the league that are known as the, conservative, play it safe, not worried about analytics. Bill Belichick is probably one of those coaches that comes to mind, the very old school football guys. It's not worried about the going for it on the 4th and 1, even if it makes sense to do so, or even if the analytics
I wonder
tell
how
you to
he
do
evolved as the analytics started coming in
And that's
more
what-
in the last 20 years. I'd be curious to look at
Good point.
his track record there. I'm not sure how that happened. But here's, to me,
But
the
that's
more
what I just
important
don't
question.
know about Brian Callahan and his game day, the decisions that he would make on game
Because
day.
he hasn't been the play
He
caller.
hasn't been the
so-
play caller and hasn't been in that position to be the one that makes that decision.
In general, most teams are moving in the direction of being more aggressive going for it.
Yes.
Right? I think Vrabel was in that category. As the last few years played out, they went for it more. I think most teams, that's the trend in the entire league. To me, the most important analytic question that I think we're going to see right off the bat is with Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker and everything being new, it's now on them more. Analytics would have told you not to pay Derrick Henry what they have paid him. Mm-hmm. But why would you not pay him up to this point? But now, I think more than ever, analytics are probably going to be the reason that I think, and this is just my opinion, I don't know anything here, but to me, the analytics would tell you it's time to get off the ride with Derrick Henry, unless he's willing to take like a league minimum or like a $2 million contract, which I don't think he's going to do. But that's where they sort of went against the grain of analytics. They trusted their guys. They overpaid for the guys that they thought were the heart and soul. And there was a lot of merit to that. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of winning that was done with that. But it's not what the hardcore analytics would tell you to do in terms of valuing the players.
Right. And that's my approach with analytics is I don't think that you can live and die by them. They're a wonderful supplementary tool to maybe give a different perspective, to collect a lot more data than your own brain could probably do. But it doesn't tell the entire story. It doesn't tell the entire story of what the Lions offense was playing like in the first half. It doesn't tell the story of how your team is shooting threes that day. That's where you have the coach's decision or the GM's decision is so incredibly important. I do want to get into your phones on this. We'll get into that coming up next. And everything is on the table. We got Tennessee potential investigation from the NCAA, analytics, the Tennessee Titans, and some of their coaching changes that are being made. The Predators fall to the Ottawa Senators in overtime, 4-3 last night after going up 3-0 in the first period. We're right into your phones, and everything is on the Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. And we are brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We are broadcasting live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. So we mentioned at the top of the show, per Pat 40 of SI.com, Tennessee is under potential NCAA investigation for NIL violations in multiple sports. And per this Pat 40 article, he said details are scarce on what Tennessee is potentially facing in the latest case, including the number of involved sports. Not a ton of information of exactly what was going on behind closed doors, but a little bit of clarification from CBS Sports' Dennis Dodd. He confirmed that the investigation is due to, or it's investigating Nico Yamaleava and his big-time alleged $8 million NIL deal. So not sure exactly what that has to do with Nico Yamaleava and what the details are there. I'm sure we'll get some more information as time goes on, but it is in regards to Nico Yamaleava. We've got a bunch.
And that goes back a ways. Like that's the beginning of NIL, if I remember correctly, right? That he was still in high school, and that was one of the first big stories I heard. Was how that was something that was noted was how quickly Tennessee formed the collective. They were on the, I like to use the term cutting edge. They were on the cutting edge of NIL. They were.
Yeah.
They were. And they jumped. They jumped out there,
like
and
they're in trouble for it.
Inspire Sports, their collective is known to be one of the more cutting edge and robust and collectives in college football. So I don't know what is part of me feels the NCAA has nothing here, that they're just trying to unfold all of these things, that they want to stay relevant, that the NCAA is always meddling and putting their big old noses in places where it doesn't belong. And the other half of me thinks, well, this is the second time that this has come up, that they are under probation, that this has been a problem with Tennessee, that a postseason ban is really the biggest thing that the NCAA can do. I don't know if this warrants that, but this might not be just another one of those. The NCAA is investigating us again.
Yeah. Well, they're looking at Florida. They're looking at Florida State.
They're looking at other teams. But then, to me, the NCAA is like that one person in the office or in the building. You're like, what do they do? You're trying to figure out, okay, you got this high title, but what do you do?
Yeah.
Like, I never really see you here. And then all of a sudden, they got to show you, oh, this is what I do, okay? So they got to make up something. Like, okay, we're going to do this or we're going to do that. The NCAA is just like for so long, it's like, what do you do, NCAA? Because you're not out front you're not proactive in anything. You're reactive to everything. So now are you, because of these conferences sort of moving away from sort of the NCAA, they're making these power conferences. Now all of a sudden you want to step up as if you're doing something now, whereas before you were always reactive to things that happened. I hope there's not a there with Tennessee. I really do. But like you said, there may be something there, but is it to the sort of magnitude that, the NCAA drops all of this and make this as a huge story? Is this a huge story? Is it really just sort of piggybacking on what they've already had, and now they may have found a few more things that don't warrant really much?
I don't think it does warrant much. Everyone is paying players. You're allowed to do it now. But I want to get into your thoughts on this. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Glenn from Greenbrier texts in, says the NIL investigation into Tennessee and Nico isn't hard to understand. The intent of NIL was the athlete could not receive NIL until that student was on campus. We all know this didn't happen. That is correct. That was the intent. However, it is California state law that you can start making NIL money. Missouri is the same. I think there's a few other states across the U.S. that it is state law that high school students can make NIL money in high school.
So if that was, if they're basing it upon that premise of what the texter just said, anywhere that Nico would have went, they would have been investigated, because he was getting money prior to him going to college. And what they're saying is you can't receive NIL benefits until you sign a letter of intent or until you actually get on campus.
it differs in every state. For example, in Missouri, if you are a Missouri high school student athlete and you sign your letter of intent to a Missouri in-state public school, you can start making money in high school. That's not the case in California. You don't have to commit to a California public school.
But is Tennessee one of those states where you can't receive NIL until you sign?
But he wasn't a Tennessee high school student. He was a California high school
I know,
student.
but what I'm saying is there could be a loophole in there where the NCAA says, nah, yeah, you can do it in California. There's a lot of things you can do in California, okay? But when you go to another state, you can't do those said things. Like, yes, you can sign or you can get NIL money, but as a state here in Tennessee, our laws are different when it comes to that. You cannot receive benefits until you sign. So does that mean only those that go to school in Tennessee, and it doesn't mean those that are outside the state?
D-Mase, I have no idea.
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
And that is the problem, is every single state in America has different
Operating
NIL
different.
laws.
Yeah, exactly.
That it is now state to state, that there's not an umbrella NIL law, federal law.
And it should
that
be.
is where we get into all of these gray areas of every state is different. I got a doozy for you, Willy.
Ooh, here we go, Willie.
One texter says, do you think that Coach Bruno is getting on the hot seat? Saros is having his worst year. The defense doesn't look good. Young talent's going backwards, and scorers aren't finishing.
The hot seat is, I think, a pretty ridiculous thing to throw out there in the first year. To try to answer the question, I think the Bruno system, if you take a look, and I'll use the term analytics, I think in the what are they getting night after night in terms of quality, what are they giving up defensively in terms of quality, I think they have overachieved to a large extent. And even results-wise, I think they're probably a little bit ahead after 50 games of where people thought they would be after 50. And we're talking about this the day after a really painful loss to a team that's not very good, a team that's talented, but a team that you had a 3-0 lead on that you should have closed the deal, right? Everybody feels bad about that. So we're asking that on this day. So it doesn't feel good now. I'm looking at a 50-game thing. I do think it's fair to say that Saros is not having a Saros type of year. I think he's been much better. The last 7 games, I thought he was good last night. I thought he did well to keep that game 3-3 after it looked like it was going to get completely out of control. I think Saros is playing well, and I think he will play even better down the stretch. Season isn't over yet. So Saros having his worst year, that's fair after 50 games. But to me, that is a plus side of Bruno, right? I think there's nothing that's more at the mercy of the head coach than the way the goalie plays. There are things that you can do, but especially the way the Predators want to play, try to get the other team on their heels, play going forward. I think if they can put it all together and have Saros play the way he's capable for the rest of the season, I think you're going to see better results. The interesting, the tough facet of it to me is the young players, right? I think Andrew Burnett probably sits there each night going, man, why can't I get these guys to get to the next level, right? He said it somewhere the day they sent Juuso Parssinen down. He said, I kind of feel responsible. I feel like I've let him down, that we have to do this. Right, I think that's a good coach, kind of looking inward and saying, "Where can I help these guys?" Because he's a former player. He's been through the growth process. Right, he wants to get the most out of his players. Cody Glass went through a long period of time where he just couldn't seem to figure it out. The injuries and everything like that. There's some signs of life there. His last 2 games, I think, have been his best 2 games, for sure. So overall, I still evaluate Andrew Burnett as doing a very good job with this, but. Snapshot today, everybody feels bad about that when you have a 3-0. It's the first time they've lost a game like that this year, up by 3 and losing. And it wasn't the worst case scenario because they could have lost in regulation, but still
pretty bad.
Bad loss. And so now they're carrying with that into tomorrow night where they're on national TV against a team that is really faltering, but a very talented team that people thought was a Stanley Cup contender. So a very intriguing backdrop to the last game before the All-Star break. But hot seat, no.
TNT tomorrow?
TNT tomorrow.
TNT tomorrow. Kurt asks, are the Preds sellers now?
I think they're not buyers. I think they're looking for the long term. What helps us the most in the big picture is how I would define it. In what I've listened to Barry Trotz say, in all of the public realms, and there's been plenty of them, and the best one to me is on our station every week. You get a great insight into what he's thinking. I don't think he's made a secret of it. I think there are players that if you could help him long term, then yeah, he would trade to try to open it up. You've got to make room somewhere along the line for some of these guys in Milwaukee eventually, whether it's at the trade deadline this year. And I don't think they were ever going to be big buyers unless it was a guy that didn't cost you a whole lot, right? They're not going to trade their first-round pick. They're not going to trade their top prospect for somebody to try to get them in over the hump into the playoffs this year, unless it didn't cost them very much. So I think you're looking for ways to improve. It's an easy thing to say, but I think they're probably more sellers, but they're not going to sell off anybody that's in the big picture plan. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like Tyson Barrie, guys like that, guys who are in the last year of their contract, I think they would be definitely listening towards if they got a good deal for them. But I think they would. It's a limited seller, I would say.
Text her into my personal text line. Jared Stillman Texan.
Oh my goodness.
Says it's time to trade Saros.
For what?
I'll ask and get back to you.
Right. Well, what's the offer? That's the question.
I'm sure his offer is not going to be high considering the way he's been playing.
Exactly. So if it's for 2 first-round picks, 3 first-round picks, then I say no. It's not time to trade Saros.
If it is for a top-line center.
Well, then I got to listen to that. If it's a top-line center, but who is that? Who's trading me a top-line center? That's
Willy,
the
this
question.
is not my question.
Okay, but
I would not trade Saros at the trade deadline.
I probably would not unless I was, as Barry Trotz has said, blown away. Mm-hmm. Blown away. And a first-line center is the thing that you would listen to, I would say, depending on who it is. Now, just like we had a great debate on, is Brock Purdy elite? Mm-hmm. Is he on his way to being elite? Who is elite? A true number one center. Was Ryan Johansson a number one center? Maybe at his best for a limited period of time. Maybe. But that's what they were hoping to get when they traded Seth Jones to get him. But the word I always use is, if you're going to trade UC Saros, you better get certainty back, not a bunch of first-round picks. That's not certainty at all. There's no guarantee that any of the first-round picks, especially if you're trading him to a contender, and the pick is going to be 21st one year, 18th another year, and then 17th the next year. There's no guarantee you get certainty out of that, and it's going to be 4 years or 5 years before you get the return of that at all. So I need certainty now, and that's what I don't know that anybody is really going to offer, is somebody like that. If they're going to, they want Saros, they want to give you the future stuff. Mm-hmm. And if I'm Barry Trotz, I'm saying, heck no, not for UC Saros. UC Saros is in the prime of his career, and I think over time you're going to see that he is a separator. He's an elite goalie that is not your regular goalie. But this is all. This is you. Oh, absolutely, you pick up. But you're not calling around to shop him around.
You're not actively shopping him, just because he's having
that's D-Mace's favorite player now.
Yeah, just because he's having a bad stretch here, and it's been bad. But again, you don't. Okay, a really good player to elite player, you don't trade them away because they're having a bad season or a bad stretch within a season. Mm-hmm. It happens. You try to let them work out of it. That's the point of having 80-some games. You figure, okay, there's going to be a lull in there. Now, he's had his lulls, and they hadn't been good, and you just hope that he fights out of it. But you just don't say, oh, we're getting rid of him. We're trading him away. But listen, if you get a top-line guy, scorer, then maybe yes. But other than that, to me, because then what do? You trade him away, you elevate Lincoln, and then you blame the scarf up. Then what? Now you possibly bringing this young guy up a little bit too soon.
That would be the plan.
Yeah, you're bringing him up a little bit too soon. Lincoln is on a 1-year deal. He has 1 year. This is the last year, right?
Yeah, he's a free agent.
So he's a free agent next year. So what if Lincoln doesn't sign back with the team. Now you're looking for another goalie. You're going to be back in the same situation, relying on a young guy to be your number one guy, and then you're going to be looking back if Askarov doesn't start off the way you want him to. You'll be looking back like, why in the hell did you trade away Saros? Yeah. Why did you trade away Saros?
I think this discussion will continue to be a discussion up until the trade deadline. I do think that the phone will ring and people will float different things at Barry Trotz, even if he never says anything to anybody. And he has said, if you blow me away, I'll listen. That's really what he has said on the record to a number of different people.
I think that's what every general manager's approach should be.
But you're willing. It's like when you go to the car dealership and you don't have a car. That's the position I was in. I needed a car. I got to go buy a car. I'm at a disadvantage because I can't.
You don't have any leverage.
Yeah.
I gotta find a car. I gotta function. But if I already have a car, and I don't have to sell my car, I could keep my car, and it's a pretty good car. Now I'm in a good position to get a good deal, right? I think that's where they are with Saros. They fully intend to sign him to the next contract. And it's interesting how goaltending is evolving in the analytics and stuff like that. You can win with a good goalie and not an elite goalie if you have a great team around that goalie. That's what's been proven here. But Nashville's a long way from having that kind of roster right now. So when you have a goalie that elevates your team, and he hasn't, in fairness, to this point in the season, he's been very average for him. The bar is very high, and I still think in 30 games the numbers can certainly come around. I think they will come around. But they intend to sign him to the next contract. That's a position of strength. That means I don't have to, like, teams will take advantage of you when they know you are going to get rid of the player eventually. You'll say, hey, that's not a good enough deal for UC Saros. And they'll say, oh, well, then we'll just wait for him to become a free agent, and you'll get nothing for him.
Yeah, you're not a very good negotiator if you're not using that.
He's under contract all the way through next year. You have a lot of time to wait this out and make the right decision.
Another texter texts in about analytics, says, I would really recommend you all look into what modern sports departments use. You guys are acting like there's a chart printed off at the beginning of the game, and that's what teams use for their analytics for the game. Any analytics department worth their salt have extremely sophisticated models that absolutely take into account current game situations. They go so far in depth, they take into account personnel on the field in real time, blah, 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 blah. So far in the game, so for certain positions, etc., etc. Yes. But the thing is, you can take every single possible factor, wind chill, direction of the wind, personnel on the field, so on and so forth. But still, nobody can predict what's going to happen. Every single analytical model could have told the Detroit Lions to go for it on 4th and 2, up 24-10. No analytical model is going to tell you that Jamison Williams is going to drop that pass.
No, they're not. I mean, listen,
Well, who dropped the first one? Josh Reynolds dropped the first one.
Yeah,
right?
I'm sorry.
First one.
Yes,
and then it was a bad pass.
Josh Reynolds. Jameson Williams on the second one.
Jameson Williams also caught the touchdown pass at the end, which I was hoping was Josh Reynolds because that would have gotten my take.
Reynolds dropped 2.
And Ferkser got tackled on the 1 yard line.
I'm
not bitter. I'm not bitter.
I don't know what the hell Ferkser was doing. Well, I'm going to tell you what he was doing before we go to break. He anticipated a guy being right there, so he was running directly out of bounds. And when he found out nobody was there, he tried to turn the ball up. Dude, you 280, okay, 290. You can't turn the ball up like you're 180.
290?
I'm just throwing.
That's my goodness.
Numbers is a funny thing.
Exactly.
Lord, Anthony Ferkser, a whole 290 pounds. Aaron Brewer,
I didn't know the guy was still in the league. All of a sudden, here's Anthony Ferkser almost scored a touchdown in the championship game.
That's got to be his brother, right? There's no way that's Anthony Ferkser.
Apparently, that was his first target of the season. First target.
And he runs out of bounds. Damn you.
Damn. All right, we'll continue this conversation coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063, The Game, and the Game Nashville app. I do have a quick Tennessee basketball thought. It has been a long time, at least for me, that college basketball, that one person, one single player has been must-see TV for me. Zion is probably the last one. Dalton Connect is becoming that for me. That I've planned my evening around making sure that I am in front of my TV, sitting on the couch, watching the Tennessee-South Carolina game tonight, because I don't want to miss what Dalton Connect is doing. I think that the game of college basketball, specifically men's college basketball, because I think women's college basketball has done a fantastic job of marketing its superstars, whether it's Paige Beckers or Caitlin Clark or Angel Reese. Like, there are names in women's college basketball. Zion's really the last one that I can think of. Maybe Brandon Miller last year with Alabama, and I think a majority of that was probably the villain aspect.
Some of it was from the wrong reason. Yeah.
The legal aspect of Brandon Miller. Dalton Connect is must-see TV for me, and that is making college basketball so fun for me this season.
I agree. He is must-see TV. What's the difference, though? Those guys are there for 1 year, and then they go pro.
Yeah.
And so that's what's
And that's the difference
always
with the women's game.
whittled away. Yeah, the women's players have been staying longer, and you
Can
get to
make more
enjoy
money.
them for
Longer
the
period
whole
of time,
growth
yeah.
of their college career. So Connect, I realize he's not a freshman, but he's burst on the scene, and now when we discover him, you only get to
He'll be
watch
on.
him through the end of March, and then that's it. So it's been whittling away at college basketball, and now the musical chairs of the NIL has taken away even more of the continuity. It's just it's a broken game to me at the highest level. It's sad, but Connect at the same time, I'm going to enjoy every time I get a chance to watch him.
He's much-watched television,
He's awesome.
I tell you that.
He is so exciting.
Is this Tennessee team different because of him? I think that's
Of course
question.
they are.
I think
Because
so.
what's the question of Tennessee the last 5 years under Rick Barnes?
They
Can't
Rick
do it in
Barnes.
March.
Right.
They
This-
Rick Barnes in March.
This guy might change that narrative.
It does feel different. Absolutely.
Get him the ball like Jimmy Chipwood. I like my chances.
And it's not
they
even
haven't
just
had a
the
guy
go-to
like that.
guy. It's the
Yeah.
supporting cast around
Oh yeah,
him as
he'll
well.
he'll get the ball to those guys.
And they play great defense.
They're always
They got
going
a
to play
chance.
good
Yeah.
defense. Always going to play good defense. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Stillman and Company. It's up next.
Be love and love on your people. Peace.